Okay. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen as well. And if you don't see it, please let me know. Your screen. Oh, you need to enable screen sharing for me.
Okay, let's do that. What about now?
That worked. Share. How's that look?
All right, cool.
All right. Let's do this. Richard, it's great to see you. Hey, everybody, we're going to get started. Richard and I are going to try to make this webinar as tight, concise, and informative as possible. You've come to learn about how we are interested in trying to help protect K-12 schools from cyber attacks, particularly ransomware. And you're going to get an opportunity to take a look at the SOCRadar platform in a moment. That's why Richard, the bigger brain of the two of us, is here. He's going to do the heavy lifting and show you how exactly we do that for K-12 schools. And I'll just jump into it. I don't want this to be a big session on FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but data indicates that ransomware is without a doubt a real problem. I think all kinds of threats are a real problem. It's not just ransomware, it's phishing, it's critical vulnerability to exploitation. And what we've learned is that, which is surprising to a lot of people, is that the threats to K-12 schools is growing significantly. We've also going to talk a little bit about some lessons we've learned. I'm going to touch on that very briefly. And then most importantly, we're going to really get into it. What is this webinar about? It's about how can we help protect K-12 schools? And it always never fails. We got to start with some statistics. I guess we have to ask ourselves if Mark Twain his words into statistics are relevant here. We don't even know if it was Mark Twain, but I thought this would be an appropriate slide. But suffice to say, there's no matter who you believe, no matter what sources you do, if you're going to do some Google searching, you're going to find out the statistics are not pretty, and they seem to be getting worse. I'm going to run through these. If you take anything away from it, and this shouldn't be surprising, we've got a big and growing problem on our hands with protecting our schools. There's almost 14,000 public school districts. That's 55 million students. That's a lot of vulnerable, ill-prepared people in harm's way. The US Government Accounting Office, the GAO, that's what I've referenced in some of this data. They report that there's about 650,000 American students that were affected by ransomware attacks in 2021. And we also looked at SOCRadar's dark mirror source. If anybody on this call is a subscriber, you're going to know that there was 1,100 distinct phishing campaigns. And if you see that graphic to the right, what that means is that more than half, 60.5% of all of those phishing domains that were impersonating US education website was using the HTTPS protocol, meaning they're getting increasingly harder to detect. And that's something insidious that we're gonna cover in a little bit when we take you through the platform. Ransomware attacks are up 61%. You're going to learn why. That's one of the things that I came into this webinar wanting to address is what is up with that? Why are schools, K-12 schools, being targeted with increasing ferocity? And there's reasons. We monitor the dark web every day, 365 days a year. We look at posts and threat actor forums. We look at dark web marketplaces, ransomware game sites, and other sources. And we recorded that there was over 700 education-related posts. That's just telling you that the number of threat actors talking about planning attacks against K-12 schools is going up. So that's an advanced early warning, if you will, on threat actors' plans against our nation's school systems. And that's going to be an important topic and theme of this webinar, frankly. The question is, too, who are these people going after K-12 schools? Well, we know that there's one ransomware group that's particularly active. It's called the Vice Society. But here's something to think about. This is even more troubling from my perspective when I was doing research for this webinar. Our analysts have identified that there are 4 distinct APT groups. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that term. It's Advanced Persistent Threat Groups. There were four of them that were specifically targeting K-12. I wrote the names of them down. They were Earth, Luska, APT-41, one called Earth Barbaroka, also known as the Gambling Puppet, and the Bronze Spring. What's more interesting about those APT groups, though, is do you know what they all had in common? It turns out they're all Chinese backed. So what's interesting about that is, unlike ransomware gangs, these APT groups are not motivated simply by the money. They're after our nation's infrastructure. It's just malicious cyber objectives. They want to cripple things. And state-sponsored groups do not care whether the targets are school districts. It's disruptive. So we're going to learn a little bit more about how we've got this report that'll share more details on it. So I talked about this. So what is it about K-12 that makes them such a ripe target? And there's an unfortunate truth. Number one, publicly funded. The funds are present. It's opportunistic financial incentives for reasons. First of all, the threat actors they know they can pressure schools and demand ransomware confidently because they know the money's there. And this brings to the second point: the data that K-12 schools has is more critical. What's interesting about that, I'll take it a layer deeper, it's more emotionally valuable than usual. So threat actors know this, and they know that it's easy prey. They know that they're rewarded for this assumption because the fact is that schools, it turns out, and again, more statistics, they're more likely to pay ransomware than many other private institutions, even though, and we have some blogs about this, the evidence suggests that paying ransomware it's completely a false errand. But that's beside the point. They know that when schools refuse to meet their demands, they just simply can either release very sensitive information. They can reach out to students. They can reach out to families. They can promise to, withhold their data and publish sensitive information. And the bottom line is, it's just becoming more and more prevalent. Monetary losses to the school districts are punishing, ranging from $50 to $1 million per cyber incident. And again, I don't want to go too deeply into this other than to say that there's also a dynamic, small budgets, under-resourced, outdated technologies, or other things that they're aware of. They think that these are easy prey. So in a nutshell, think of these K-12 schools as data-rich, resource-poor environments, and sensitive personal nature of what's at stake makes the situation all the more critical. So there's reasons why they're going after our kids and the schools they go to. Fallout, this is from the Government Accounting Office as well. Basically what they did is they went out and they talked to a bunch of school districts about the impacts of cyber attacks. And what they found is that there were these issues about loss of learning. Typically, they reported that the attacks resulted in about 3 days to 3 weeks of disruptions. And this is basically they're disrupting curriculums. They're creating these losses in the education workflow. PII is an issue. Results of the disclosure are the theft of students and school employees. Think of teachers' personal information. Other fallout, which is direct and painful for the students themselves in some cases, is we've monitored the public disclosures of things like students' grades. We found instances of bullying, reports, cards, and so forth, social security numbers. So it just leaves the students vulnerable too. I mean, to kinds of physical and financial and emotional harm. And all this is certainly concerning, and to say that is an understatement. But that's the reason we're here on today's webinar, is to talk about what we can do about that. I'm not going to cover this one. I'm throwing this into the webinar for opportunistic purposes. It's also for an additional resource if you want to take advantage of it. We have this education threat landscape report, and I'm going to share with you a QR code at the end of this webinar where you can go download it. But what we do is we highlight a series of lessons that we learned over the course of looking at attacks in the last year. They include things like paying the ransomware. In the case of a K-12 situation, it's largely not viable. That we actually have a particular instance of where a historical college in the US was a target of a ransomware attack in 2021. And it caused the end of the school. This is a 150-year-old institution, and it was shut down because they just could not shoulder the cost of the ransomware. And there are other lessons that we go through systematically. So I'm going to leave this one to say that there are some key lessons that you can learn. We're not going to talk about these anecdotal stories because we'd like to actually get to some more tactile ways that you can prevent these attacks if you're K-12. What we do know is that these preventative controls, hardening the exterior, hardening the shell, is just not working because the attacks are increasing and they're likely going to be successful. So instead, what can you do? If you had an early warning system, think about something that was running silently in the background every single day, that was instantly generating these alarms that you could be notified. Hey, you've got a critical vulnerability lurking in your school's IT infrastructure. And I'm not talking about just your known system and servers. What Richard's going to show you about are things like shadow IT. They're very often exploited. And if a system doesn't even know it's running, then they can't protect it. And so we can show you how you can protect yourself against those kinds of trapdoors. There's other things that you could do. What if your IT credentials were on sale on the dark web? That's precisely what hackers are looking for. And what we're going to do is show you in a single pane of glass very quickly, real life examples, how you can see instances of your stakeholders' usernames and passwords on sale on the dark web for about $10 a piece. That's pretty much the going market for those in a stabilized e-commerce infrastructure like the dark web. Richard's going to show you how this works, and you'll be able to see some of these listings. But you're going to be able to know when these things hit the dark web or any of these marketplaces, these botnets. What if also if your teachers are using their personal PCs, they're going home, they're logging into the network to grade homework, and they're essentially opening themselves to malware that will not necessarily be found by your AV softwares and systems. And what essentially happens is a hacker is going to be able to grab those session cookies when they're logging in. What that means is they can bypass multi-factor authentication, which is a lot of schools have done, even the most sophisticated. And what we're going to do is show you how you can actually detect those instances really quickly. You can know if a threat actor's bought a domain that looks eerily similar to your school's domain. What they're going to do with it is they're likely going to use it for phishing attempts against your employees, against your teachers, against students. And you're going to be able to see those things as they occur. You're going to get alarms and alerts on them. And you'll, importantly, have a system where you can shut them down. Think of, instead of having more preventative controls, having a crystal ball that can give you an advantage over a threat actor who means nothing good to your K-12 organization. So what this means in simple terms is a single pane of glass shows you how your K-12 looks to a threat actor. You're not going to be playing defense. You're actually going to be playing some form of offense. You're going to be able to see your K-12 infrastructure, all of it in its form that a threat actor looks at it. You're going to see all of your exploitable vulnerabilities. They're going to be rated by priority. You're going to see how a hacker can exploit them. They're going to basically, you're going to be able to sit down and you're going to be able to understand these things without filling out a setup form. All you're going to be providing is a domain, because a threat actor, I guarantee you, if he's targeting your K-12 schools, he's not going to call you. He's not going to have you fill out a POC request form. He's not going to ask you for your subdomains, your IP address ranges, what IoT you've got running. He's just basically going to say, hey, there's a school. How am I going to get in? We're going to show you all of the things that he or she is looking at that they're going to use and exploit and leverage to get in. What this solution is called is XTI, and it looks like this. If I'm going to show you a simple diagram, XTI stands for Extended Threat Intelligence. And it does it precisely what I just talked about, that crystal balls. This is the part of the webinar where you're going to be able to get away from my rambling, and Richard's going to take over, and he's going to show you exactly how this system works. I'm going to add a couple of quick points, Richard, if you don't mind, before you take the reins. Basically what this is in a nutshell, I'm going to give you just a quick definition so that you know when you get to the interface, you know what you're looking at. XTI is natively integrated 3 elements of 3 distinct cybersecurity disciplines in one simple, easy to use platform: critical or cyber threat intelligence, external attack surface management, digital risk protection. The latter is a very sophisticated dark web search and monitoring system. It does a lot more than that, but we're going to show you that. The platform also includes proaction. And this is really important. You find something, let's say it's a phishing domain that looks a lot like your K9 domain, your K12, not K9, your K12 domain. You're going to be able to press a button and get it taken down. So there's a level of proactivity to this platform. And one more thing I want to emphasize, pound for pound, it's backed by a remarkable expert analyst network that you're going to find is going to be extraordinarily important. It's a big part of the support systems. It augments a lot of our automated technologies. Richard's going to talk a little bit about that as well. So without further ado, Richard, I got through my slides in just under 15 minutes as I promised. So I'm going to let you take over and show the team what this actually looks like. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can take over. All right. Sorry, Richard, I've got so many things buried.
I was gonna say, sorry, I was on mute. You're seeing my screen, right? It's all good? Or no?
I don't know. I don't think so, because now you can. I believe everybody can see your screen now, yes.
All right, now, yeah, absolutely. So the goal, our goal is to be able to show you what a hacker sees about you, because every attack has a reconnaissance part. Remember cybercriminal chain, right? Everything starts with a recon. And as John pointed out earlier, the hacker will sometimes, even without touching you, will do a pre-investigation if they select as a target. Sometimes there's a known vulnerability going on. For example, there was one about exchange a few years back. As soon as that hit the market, so to speak, threat actors were looking in places like Shodan for vulnerable servers, for example. So sometimes they cast a white net, sometimes they target you specifically. So to that end, what we want to do is, first of all, like hacker would do, take your website, main domain, this is the first place that they're going to see you. And then from there, we want to show you what your digital footprint looks like. What is your existence over there in the internet, because that is your first line of defense anyways. From a website, you can find what type of domains that they have, subdomains, what type of IP addresses, websites, certificates, whatever is running on the external surface, you need to know, because that's the first thing that the hacker is going to check out. If you look at the popular attack vectors that John shared, the most popular for ransomware and for other attacks anyways is remote code execution availability. So if in one of your applications, so we're detecting your IP addresses and fingerprinting what applications are running there. If one of these applications have a vulnerability that allows remote code execution, that is like a big chance for the threat actor. They don't want to take a chance of sending a phishing email with some malware in it. You click on it, you download it, right? That's a chance. But if there's a remote code execution vulnerability available in here, that is no chance. It's directly available. So this is like the preferred method of attack for them. So this means you got to stay on top of first your footprint, because sometimes you don't even know that you have this IP address running, right? Knowing what you have is the first step. And then secondly, you got to stay on top of these vulnerabilities, which is something that we do. We have active and passive scanning capabilities for these IP addresses, constantly helping you there. The second popular attack vector is if you're exposing a critical service, maybe a remote desktop protocol service, for example. Those are very popular too. Well-protected organizations will probably not have them. But if you are thinking who's going to come after us, because we are a charitable organization or in education or in health sector, sometimes you may see RDP ports open, for example, for some companies. That's also a big opportunity for them as well. What they do is try passwords, brute force attacking, credential stuffing, which is our next point, actually, staying on top of your passwords. And once they get in, they're going to be able to, you know, search the network, expand, find the data, exfiltrate, and then encrypt, and then double extort you, or triple extort in some cases, with that data. So critical port exposure, critical services exposure is also important. Staying on top of your MySQL databases, FTP access, SSH access, RDP access is very important. In fact, if I show you right now in the forums, so we have this dark web news feature where we track all popular hacker forum posts and ransomware blocks and tell you what is the talk of the town. So right now I'm going to show you these interesting categories. So let's see. Access, RDP access. For example, these are all current RDP accesses in the world, and we can select further this, select this further with an industry or country. RDP access for Asian beverage firm, so some Polish manufacturing company or Indian manufacturing company. This data, for example, is going on for $500. So someone will pay $500 and get this access, get in there, do the ransom, and ask for from 100K to $10 million, depending on their revenue. Because ransomware actors, they have business analysts going through the books, assessing, you know, if you can, what you can pay, and charging you that amount. Everything starts usually with $10 or $500 access like this. So we're helping you stay on top of this kind of access. You know, do you have your RDPs open? The other thing is they sometimes sell network access, like a VPN access, for example, some other domain admin access. And we help you stay on top of these sales as well. Sometimes these type of sales happen in the black markets, not in the forums like this. Through bot markets. Let me show you a few examples of those as well in the platform. So when you're infected with a Trojan, one of the things that Trojan does is to make you a bot, basically the slave of the Trojan owner. And they can do many things with a bot. They can use that bot in a DDoS attack against other targets, but some other things that they do there is to extract credentials from the browsers, as well as session cookies. What is the significance of session cookies? They can help you bypass a two-factor authentication because the browser will, the server will recognize that it's coming from a known browser and will help you bypass 2FA. Remember that, remember me checkboxes? That's your session cookie helping you do that. These bots, the credentials extracted from these bots will be offered in sale in two main markets. One is Genesis market. The other is the Russian bot market. Let me show you one example in here. So if you're in the Russian bot market, usually the access is $10. What we do for our customers is to, if I can make this bigger, take a screenshot of that current sale, tell you all the domains and subdomains appearing in this bot, and highlight yours. So yours is dev.greenanimalsbank.com. So one of your developers is potentially compromised. If you pay $10 and get this data, you can get screenshots from this computer, files, make a model of this computer, and use it in your attack further to gain access, whatever this guy has, and expand in the network and do your nefarious actions, so to speak. This brings me to actually our third popular attack vector, which is account takeover, right? Actually, we've been talking about account takeover so far. So if there is no remote code execution available or critical services exposed, what you can do is try a password at a login page. And you can get these passwords from these bot markets, or sometimes they are freely available circulating the Telegram channels. So if I search a random domain right now, so I'm going to search uber.com. It's not in education. Or let's search, this is K-12, right? I don't want to search a K-12 in here. Yeah, let me do, for demo purposes, let me show uber.com. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure I'm not showing any passwords or anything. I'll just try to be careful with that. Yeah, this is all good. So sometimes these threat actors, instead of selling the data, they use it as a sample to sell more, right? There are these Telegram channels circulating this type of data, and they say, hey, I have thousands of stealer looks available from Trojans with their session cookies, pay this money and get this data. And as a sample, here you go, here is some. So for example, one of our latest bots from such a Telegram channel has a login for authUber.com. This is clearly their customer, not something critical for them. One poor Uber user is infected with a Trojan, very likely, right? So I'm not going to click on and show you the details, but we will have the full data from this guy's browser, whatever logins that they have. So threat actors will subscribe to these channels and track that data as well to see if there's a password that they can use. The other one is, actually you can see Telegram channels in here. Let me see if I can go to this channel, for example. So we provide the sources as well. Yeah, so this guy says shopping combo list. What is this? As other websites are hacked, threat actors combine the username, password, credentials from these other website hacks and circulate them in these Telegram channels. So if I click on this text file, I'll be able to download thousands of email and password combinations. What is the significance of this for you? If one of your domain admins or network guys or IT guys or one of your VIPs, perhaps, their credentials are in here, the threat actors will try that credential in your login pages or their email or their social media and try to take over that account and infiltrate your system with that. So these are some ways SOCRadar can show you where your credentials are circulating and help you against account takeover. Again, two-factor authentication is a great help, but if you go back to these recent hacking attempts, sometimes they bypass two-factor authentication with SIM swapping attacks. Basically, learn the phone number of that employee and try to get that phone number to themselves so that they can get the code. Which brings me to my other point, monitoring the PII of your employees, critical guys, like help desk people, or domain admins, or people like those. So so that you can be cautious about the potential SIM swapping attacks for these people. This is also something that we do as well. And finally, social engineering is another attack vector where you get an email and then you click some stuff and then you download the Trojan, which brings in the ransomware. Aside from extracting your credentials, they will also bring in the ransomware to the network with that. But if you have a critical vulnerability or some critical exposed service, that's even better for threat actors not to take a chance. So this is how we help you, educational organizations or any other organization, really stay on top of ransomware threats and cyber threats in general. In terms of social engineering, a good use case that we have, which can also potentially help against ransomware, is staying on top of your domain impersonations or typo squatting domains. Especially the ones with MX hackers, they can send email to you. So as soon as there's some new domain typo squatting you with an MX capability, perhaps you can prevent that domain from sending emails to your staff members so that you can avoid some potential breach via these scam emails. The other one is being able to track your VIPs' personal passwords, personal accounts rather, on top of their corporate accounts and their LinkedIn impersonations. Because VIPs, they're likely to engage the company from their Gmail account or personal account. And we see threat actors committing business email compromise via these account takeovers of the VIP. I think ransomware, this is a possibility for ransomware attacks as well. Once a critical employee's account is taken over, right? So you should be tracking that critical employees passwords to stay on top of ransomware as well, not just business email compromise. So you can also subscribe to your industry and country to stay on top of the ransomware blocks, to see who is the latest victim, and even monitor yourself potentially in these dark web posts, because sometimes threat actors don't mention you by name. They may say, in Pennsylvania, this county, big school district, revenue this much, or budget this much rather, this many students, we have VPN access for them, contact us. So this also helps you stay ahead of threat actors as well. If you think they are describing you, then we can help you engage that threat actor, make sure it is you. If it is, then try to engage them and stay ahead of that threat as well. So this is another area where we can help you. We also provide threat feeds for your firewall and SIM. So we have good API integrations where we provide you the ransomware, botnet, malware, IPs, IOCs, rather, like IP addresses, hashes of the day, the ones that they use, so that you can actually block them at your firewall. No network access to them or from them, and you can do some enrichment in your SIM as well. There are a few other use cases that gives you better external intelligence, but these are the ones that are more related to ransomware. So these are the ones that I wanted to talk about. I think something John mentioned was supply chain as well. This is becoming important too. Some attacks come through the supply chain. For example, the CNA ransomware attack that was via the supply chain. So we're trying to also help you stay on top of your vendors, your partners, if they are a ransomware victim, if they're compromised, because via them they can come to you. So we create reports about them, their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses. They are reported to you, and then if they are mentioned in the news, for example, you have a developer you're working with, a development company for some of your applications, and there's a critical bot sale for them. You'd want to know about them because if they are hacked, they have access to you, unlimited access, your MSP provider. So these kind of providers, you can stay on top of the credentials and their weaknesses, critical services, dark web exposure as well. So this is another area that we can help you with ransomware.
Richard, there was a in that education report, I might mention that there's actually I mentioned those lessons learned. There's a particular account of an LA public school district in Los Angeles who was hit, but it was because one of their vendors. I'm sorry, this was in New York. It was a New York public school district got hit with an attack because one of their vendors in California, who did their digital grading systems, was hacked. They were able to use that as a attack vector into the New York school system. So it's a good supply chain example in that report if anybody wants to download that.
Right. You receive an email. There's a PDF file. PDFs are, I think, especially dangerous than Word, because Word, Excel, you have to click further. In PDF, sometimes even opening the file may compromise you if you're running on a vulnerable version of the Adobe Reader, for example. So you receive a file, and of course, you can submit that to Wirestolen, great idea, but you can also submit it for a sandboxing over here as well to see if it is potentially malicious or not before opening the file. So there's malware analysis capabilities that we provide. Now, we cover your external exposure, but internal vulnerabilities are also important. So we are not a vulnerability management solution. You still need your MSSPs for that. You still need your Tenable for that, Qualys for that. So you got to have that. But ours is helping you prioritize your vulnerabilities and staying on top of them. So you can subscribe to internal products that you use. And if they have new vulnerabilities that are just recently disclosed, you get a newsletter for them as well. So that's another help with staying on top of vulnerabilities that we provide. I think we can have some questions. There must be a Q&A box somewhere. Feel free to drop questions there if you have any, and we'll try to get to them. You can probably type your question. I don't think you're able to speak.
It's the Q&A. I assume it's a Q&A button. But go ahead, Richard. I'll. I
Yeah.
don't see any yet, but go ahead. None so far.
Lucky day. Everybody knows about these dangers. No follow-ups. Great webinar.
You did a perfect demo. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Here's one. This one says, I saw that CISA put out new regulations recently. Do you know anything about that?
Like regarding education, well, you bring to my mind actually something interesting. I don't remember any new regulations. We can look it up, but something that we do, maybe this can partially answer the question, is checking your vulnerabilities against the CISA list, right? To telling you if you are passing them or if there's a failure. This is, I think, a great prioritization effort against ransomware in your infrastructure. So there are some statutes about school data, like you expose students' data, is it your responsibility or not? There's some responsibility on your behalf to keep that data safe. I think once a breach happens, you know, if you think about the litigation part of it, if you haven't done your security job well, then there may be some liability issues for the school districts. So if you are sued and if they investigate if your protection measures were done or not. So that's one thing that I can think about. I mean, when you say education, so we're all thinking positively, but there may be some liability issues going forward as these things increase because there's just too many of them, and all of our data is becoming public via these breaches.
Yeah, and I mean, I did a little. It's a good question. I did a little bit of research coming into this webinar on legislative actions. I'm not sure that this is specific to the CISA. I think that the K-12 cybersecurity folks on this call might be aware of the Enhancing K-12 Cybersecurity Act. That was one of them. But that was really some government funding. It was essentially provide up to 20 million over 2 years, I think it was, to provide schools with some cybersecurity resources. I think what I found interesting about that legislation was when I looked at the amount, I wasn't quite sure how that was going to be doled out. It didn't seem very significant, certainly when you consider you know, the number of schools in public districts across the country and only 20 millions to help them improve their security programs. I just didn't find that was that compelling. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but that's, and I looked at some other things, but that was the one that I thought was most specifically directed at the K-12 system.
Yeah, right now I'm also looking at dark web news with the education sector in the US filtered. A lot of like data on sale, but also this is not a school probably, it says an educational company, but what I'm talking about, Linux access sale. So this is how the ransomware starts with $300 only. So see how the company is described in here, $563 million and root permission. So this is a good machine that they have, and the price is for $300. Unauthorized shell access. So some of these are educational companies in the US, but it's actually across the globe. US is tagged in here. I think it's probably one of these companies are in the US. Yeah, local admin, but it's in telco. So that kind of got mixed in there. Database of Shenandoah Central School District is leaked. I think this is because of some sort of a ransomware attack, and this is the aftermath that the data is published. Yeah, you see another school district data leaked. Probably after some sort of a ransomware attack or initial compromise, they're leaking the data like this. We can even do the ransomware block. So we track ransomware attacks separately. Let's say affected country and select United States as well. Yeah, so new victim of Alpha VM, Black Cat, Florida International University, North Carolina A&T. So it looks like universities, high schools, the data of Greenville para high school. So they probably compromised this first and then leaked it. Janesville School District, Sapulpa Public Schools, Phillips Community College, Central College. Yeah, because of the data, a good target. So lots of recent posts, as you can see, from this year and last year. So there's a question about how to get in touch with SOCRadar to have a follow-up conversation. So what would be the best way for that, John?
I will get to that. It's a great question. I've actually got a slide with my contact details. You guys, anybody could reach out to me at any time, and we can have a private session, go through all this in a little more detail. We can look at some searches specific to your institution, you name it. But I'll provide those details before we're done here.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Cool.
I am going to finish this webinar with a couple of things, and I really want to get to this. I think this is important for any K-12 participants. Let me share my screen again. Screen 2. Okay. This was just a summary of what Richard just went over, some of the things that you can do in the platform. And this XA platform is something that we are going to offer with regards to a very special promotion that we're offering as part of this webinar series in education. Basically, we're calling it the K-12 Protection Program. It's unfortunately not, and I apologize if there are any university listeners today, it's not specific to universities, it's only K-12. We do have special options for higher education, but what I'm going to talk about here is covered just for K-12, and it's an important program for us. It's a personal thing for a lot of us here. We have kids, and you know, as K-12 students, we want to see that they stay out of harm's way. We also want to protect our public infrastructure, obviously, because of its critical nature to our infrastructure. So what we did is we took a program that addresses certain realities that we've talked about today. The most important is that K-12 are underfunded, understaffed. They need help against an adversary who's increasingly sophisticated. They're very motivated. And I'm not sure if, I did mention that the Chinese groups were those that were likely going after a lot of K-12 schools right now. That's obviously not cool, but here's the program. First, we want to spread the word. It's the only requirement that we have is for a K-12 school to take advantage of this pricing is simply give us a referral. And the idea is that we want to spread the word. But we are putting our money where our mouth is on this particular offer. It includes the two most powerful modules for a K-12 school to get an advanced warning system against attacks. It's our attack surface management and our digital risk protection. You can see it. I put it on the slide up there to the left. That's that menu that Richard was just running through. This duo packs, I think, what exactly a public school will need. It's going to give you alerts for all critical vulnerabilities. It's going to look at your domains, IP addresses, websites, SSL certs, everything. Plus, with the digital risk protection module, you're going to get dark web monitoring, protection against impersonating domains, phishing attacks, social media risks. It also includes takedown services, and there's more to it, as Richard had walked through as well. The package pricing is for K-12, eliminated some elements of our traditional pricing model. It's really simple. It's either 1 user or 5 users. How many administrative users that you need to access this system? For 1 user, it's $10,000 a year. For 5 users, it's $16,000 a year. That's we've tried to put this at a price point that is extraordinarily low to entice K-12 schools to take advantage of the program. It's not something we provide commercially. It's just part of something that we want to make part of this initiative. And we hope those of you on this call will take advantage of it. And if you do want to talk about it further, I'm putting 2 QR codes up here on the left. I guess that's a red one. It's a simple form. All you got to do is, you can do this now, or you can certainly do it later. Point your phone at this. It's a way for you to get complete access to the system at no cost. It's a freemium version of our software and platform. It's key, if you do want to take advantage of the K-12 program, use this QR code because it automatically enrolls you in the K-12 program. So if you do down the road wish to subscribe to the paid version, this will automatically enroll you in that program. You can certainly do this later. I've got my email address there at the bottom if you need to get this. The QR code on the right is so you can access that education report we talked about a few times with regards to the lessons learned and so forth on the webinar. So if you're interested in our findings from that, it's specific to the education sector from last year, you can get that on the right-hand link. So those are 2 links that I hope prove valuable. Again, my email address is down below. Richard and I will circle back with anybody on this call who'd like to get a personal demonstration. And like I said, please take advantage of the freemium version, which is that left-hand QR code. I hope everybody subscribes to that. It's worth taking a look. There's no obligation, no costs involved whatsoever. We're just thrilled that you were here, and we hope you'll take advantage of it. Thank you so much, everybody. Richard, any parting comments from you?
All right. I appreciate the opportunity to talk and looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Likewise. Thanks, everybody.